Good day and welcome to EV World News, where we talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm your host, David Neese, and I'm here with Bill Moore. How are you doing today, Bill?
I am doing just peachy keen, thank you.
Well,
How's
well,
that?
well,
How's
well,
that for a segue?
there you go. There you go. Well, we can go ahead and get right into it. So, one of our things today is about an article about Peachtree City in Georgia.
Yep.
Peachtree City has 9,300 golf carts running around the city out of 13,000 households. Now, this is kind of interesting. Now, they say that the majority of them are electric, and an electric golf cart typically has a range of about 15 to 25 miles, depending on the setup.
Yeah,
And
and those are almost always lead acid batteries. So
well, so you don't have to worry about the lithium, right?
well,
Anyways,
I suppose that's one way to look at it.
it's mostly a town of 80,000 people that's mostly 55 and older, and they like driving around in their golf carts. They have specialized trails and other things. They can ride them around. You don't need a driver's license. And you have to be 16 or older to drive it solo, and a 12-year-old can drive it with an adult. And I think that's kind of a fascinating look at trying to decarbonize a city when people are able to go around and do this. They have car-free circulation paths. I thought this was quite interesting.
Yeah, and
Most,
the point of the article, of course, is that it is, with forethought. If you're gonna, the town was designed, around the concept of supporting an older generation,
yeah,
and the idea was is that why do you need a car, to go a few blocks to the grocery store, when you could just as easily take the take the golf car because it's kind of a golfing, built around a golfing community. Um, so they're not the only ones, of course, doing that. The Villages down in Florida, outside of Orlando, does that. There's a community, I forget the name now, I think it's Sun City in Arizona. Very similar, where they just simply, a lot of the population, which are older people, use their golf cars. It's a fun, open way to to get around. And one of the things I think the article pointed out was the fact that it helps establish. It prevents you from being isolated inside that steel and glass box that most of us drive around in because they're open. It's not quite as um, prone to it's much better suited for an older population than say riding younger generation riding bicycles and things around. I think the point of it that they're trying to make in the article is the fact that maybe communities should start looking at that as an option. Nebraska allows, by the way, Nebraska has a law which I helped pass in 2012 that allows these types of vehicles called low speed electric vehicles to be used on our streets here in Nebraska on speed limits less than 35 miles an hour. Well, that's pretty much all of the town you and I live in. And
correct.
so it would make sense that instead of driving over to the local Hy-Vee or the wherever you're going to go, the restaurant and so on, take the golf cart, take the low speed electric vehicle, and leave the gas guzzler at home.
I
That's
like
the
to
idea.
walk. I live in a really walkable neighborhood, though, so
Even better. You're just you've got
I've got a
probably a couple
Sam's Club,
blocks
a
to go over
Walmart, a
to the
Lowe's.
shopping center.
Yeah, I mean they're right on the edge of the subdivision.
Yeah.
But so I was going to bring up. So I told you about Exeter Fleet. Exeter Fleet's a U.S. based electric vehicle
Right.
manufacturer. So they're moving their headquarters to Cocoa Beach, Florida. Cocoa Beach, Florida, kind of like Papillion, has a max speed limit of 35 for the whole town.
Yeah.
And so they're bringing in their low speed electric trucks to Cocoa Beach starting next month. And the city of Cocoa Beach has asked them to also bring in golf cart style vehicles for hauling people around back and forth because there's cruise ships at the Cape Canaveral, Port Canaveral
Right.
area and start ferrying them around the town on electric golf carts. And so that's part of the initiative that Exceeder Fleet is taking starting next month in the city of Cocoa Beach, Florida, which I thought was kind of cool. I thought it'd be a good little.
Yeah, that's great. That's the kind of direction we need. We need to go. It is possible to decarbonize suburbia, and that's one promising way to do that. Just restrict the speed limits. Encourage people to make it easier for them to walk, make it easier for them to bike, and if you need to, haul more than a few backpack load of groceries, make it feasible for them to get around in in something like a golf cart or a NEV low speed electric vehicle. Interestingly, there was a guy that I knew long time ago that did this in the south of France, and he actually had a deal with the grocery chain in this French town down. It wasn't Marseille, but it was in the area of Marseille. That actually did that. He had a contract, and it was his job. People would call up and say pick me up. These were people that were older and didn't want to own a car, and didn't feel like driving, or weren't allowed to drive anymore. And so he had a shuttle service that he would shuttle them back and forth to the grocery store, and that was a service they provided. So there's all kinds of really interesting things we could do like that to reduce the size of our carbon footprint.
Well, I'm going to segue into the next article because the next article is something interesting. Because one of my things, as I look at the stock market and I look at companies in the green energy space or trying to decarbonize, one of the issues is that, it's nice that the government incentivizes things, but on the flip side, you have to bring something to the market that people also want and will support so that it can long term be profitable. And this is one of the reasons I really like this article that you brought up today, which is about private companies
Yeah.
investing in passenger rail.
Yep.
Now, the reason I say this is this: it shows in the picture, it shows the Brightline train down there in South Florida. So I recently took a trip to Florida for a conference and I stayed in Fort Lauderdale. I stayed at an apartment building that was about 2 blocks from the Fort Lauderdale rail junction for the Brightline Railroad.
Right.
My conference was at the Miami Beach Convention Center, which was about a 10-minute drive from the Brightline station in Miami. At one point, Miami had a free shuttle from the Brightline over to the convention
Okay.
center,
Yeah.
but they've dropped it. But at almost all of the locations where the Brightline stops, and this runs from Palm Beach down to Miami, and it has stops in Aventura, um, Fort Lauderdale, and obviously Palm Beach. But this article is talking about how they're about to connect to Orlando as well, which will
Yeah.
be really nice. And but there's a company in Miami and at least at the one in Fort Lauderdale, which are the only stops I got off at, that had electric golf cart service that would take you basically anywhere that you wanted within like a mile or two of the railhead, so you didn't have to walk. But I walked. I was too lazy to flag people down, and it was just as easy. It wasn't. I didn't need the commotion, and
Right.
I'm a capable walker most of the time.
They didn't have any electric foot scooters there, kick scooters.
Oh, that stuff was everywhere. And what was also interesting is I saw people bring their e-bikes onto the train.
Yes. Yes.
And so now this one is showing the Brightline Railroad, but a new passenger rail service was supposed to open in Florida this upcoming weekend to take passengers from Miami to Orlando. It's been delayed with no new opening date set so far. Now, what I like about this, the Brightline, is this was done so the Brightline actually owns their rail network and they own most of the real estate
Along
near
it.
the terminals. So what they're doing is they're developing apartments and condominiums
Yep.
near all of their terminals so then they have a basic market for people that not just want to be in those communities but that may work down the rail. And I'll tell you, it was really nice. The terminals were just like a brand new airline terminal.
Yeah.
And so very modern, all kinds of places to charge your phones, no shortage of Wi-Fi access, lots of room to work on the train. If you were seated in pods of 4 with a table and chargers, you
Yeah.
could work, you could break out a laptop, or you could eat something that people walk through, serving food and beverage. That was extra, but it cost
For
me
sure.
roughly $20 each way from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, which I thought was reasonable. And it took about 45 minutes. I talked to somebody who was going to the same conference that I was that also came from Fort Lauderdale, and he said it saved about an hour and a half of time as well with dealing with traffic
Oh yeah.
on that path.
Then you got to
So
find a place to park the rental car, and yeah. So no, it
right,
makes
right. So it was really quite unique in this way. And this article goes on to talk about rail companies were losing money on passenger trains. Congress created Amtrak to run the routes instead. But what I do like about Brightline is that it seems to be covering its own bills. Now, it did get millions of dollars from the government for the Florida project. There's another project out west that's requesting 4 billion from the feds. Not
yeah.
sure exactly
California is
which
looking to
project.
do something like that.
Yeah, I'm
But yeah, the whole idea, the success of these things is when you build these lines, you want to build or have them in very close proximity within 4 or 5 blocks of housing. And generally, those are multi-family housing, condominiums. They point out things like that. That was a model that was developed very early on, a number of decades ago, down in Curacao, in South America, and they found that by building those, they encouraged people to live along those, and they used the rail, and it just was. So I think what the obviously Brightline said as well, you know, we'll use the rail system as the loss leader to take and get people to come in and buy these apartments and condominiums, and that's where we'll make our money, and we'll also guarantee that we'll have ridership. So it's really makes a lot of sense to look at it from that perspective. It's not a new model, because if you will remember, when they built the Union Pacific, they got a whole bunch of property all the way along that stretch of rail track. This is there was quite a bit of scandal around that, involving various senators and things, and but that's what led to, if you will, it led to the development of the West. The
well,
wagon trains that got us started, but it was the rail system that really made the difference in the conquest of the West, I guess you'd say so.
right, right. Well, what I liked about Brightline too, it had almost I wouldn't say it had a party atmosphere. They weren't like playing music or running strobe lights or anything on there, but they did serve alcohol on there, which I don't really drink, but at each location there was also a bar and a place you could buy snacks and things like
Sure.
that, and that a lot of passengers were really taking advantage of sitting at the bar having drinks and things like that. So I thought it was really, for a lot of people, it was probably a very nice way to travel that might suit their lifestyle, and it had a good just overall atmosphere. Like I said, it was very clean, safe. They did make you go. They did search your bags, things like that, like they would for major transportation. So
Right.
quite an element of safety, I assume. But like I said, I saw people bring scooters and e-bikes on
Mhm.
the train and take them with them to their, wherever they're going. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about our last topic. So our
Yeah.
our electric fees or electric vehicle fees fair compared to internal combustion engines. So let's hear your thoughts, Bill.
We use the roads. I own an electric car. I also have a gasoline hybrid, but we do most of our driving in an electric car. And I have a privilege of using really nice roads around the community, for which all of us end up paying. And the way we end up paying that is through generally through the fees that we pay to the state and federal government when we fill up our gasoline tanks. Well, I don't fill up a gasoline tank. I just go upstairs, I grab the plug in my garage, and I plug the car in. So I'm not, you could say, I'm not paying for the roads that I'm driving on through those fees. So I don't have an issue with wanting to do my part to pay for those fees. But what I do have an issue with is when a state entity or even federal entity, but state entity begins to penalize me more for that privilege of using those roads than the person next to me does when they drive their big pickup truck or their SUV or their minivan or whatever. I've sat down and I've done the math on this, and I've said, if I were paying the right correct amount of fees, I should probably be paying somewhere in the vicinity of about $120, maybe something like that. Here in Nebraska, we do have a fee, and I expect this will go up. It'll inevitably go up, but hopefully not with the, pardon my French. This is on the internet, so I can say it, right? Bullshit.
We might get demonetized.
They're doing to the people in Texas. They're charging them $200, but when you first register the vehicle, there's an additional $200 on top of that, if I understand the law correctly. So they're hitting these people with a $400 fee that the people that bringing in and registering their pickups and their SUVs and their minivans don't have to pay. And so if you sit down, I think the Consumer Reports did their own analysis of this, and they came out with a number pretty close to what I came up with, which is about $120 for the average person driving the average number of miles in an electric car. I've owned my car 3 years, and I put just over 10,000 miles on it in 3 years. Well, no, longer than that now, 4 years. So what's that work out to be? Less than 10,000 miles at 2,500 miles a year?
Yeah, but you don't drive very much, though. So
no, because I'm one of those privileged people that live to the ripe old age of retirement and a decade beyond that. And and I have the joy of working from my office here in my lovely walkout basement,
So people ask me all the time why I like living in Nebraska. So you and I live in Papillion, which in Papillion, I think that if a pothole here lasts for a full month, they execute somebody at the city works department. So they never last. And here they don't fill potholes, they tear the damn road out and replace it. And I'm just like, I sometimes looking at this in awe. It's like, wow. I mean, when they replace a road, or, when there's a pothole here, they take it so
just take whole
seriously.
chunks of concrete out, and yeah.
Right. I mean, I look at that just in utter amazement. And they do it so well. It's
Well,
not like,
that's one of the reasons why Papillion has been for years now in the top 5
yeah,
small towns in the country
United
to live
States.
in.
Right. I get
Boy,
it.
were we brilliant.
Yeah, but we pay in property taxes for that. I guess I
Well,
have
yeah,
never
we
really.
do pay property taxes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we got high property taxes here, but I'm just
Well,
saying that.
no, now, as long as you get to my age, they take that into consideration. So I do have I do pay taxes, property taxes, but not what I used to have to pay at property taxes before I got to this age. So
Yeah, but anyways, so I don't. You're saying 120. You think it'd be fair for you? I mean, the average
well,
person though drives a lot more than you know 2,500 miles a year. The average driver in the United States, the average male driver drives about 18,000 miles a year. And when
and
you get in it,
families, what is it? Families is about 14,000, something like that.
yeah, well, I've seen a statistic that men between the ages of 25 and 45 actually drive closer to like 20 something thousand miles a year.
Yeah.
It's
So
really a much larger number.
do the math on that. The average fuel economy of a car is just shy of 25 miles per gallon. So take that and divide 25 miles per gallon into that 18 or whatever number you want, and that gives you the number of gallons you burn in a year. And then take that and multiply that by the federal and state excise tax, which is typically where are we at, about 8 cents a gallon, somewhere in that general area. And you multiply it by that, and most people driving, even though that amount of mileage, it comes out to be
It'd only be
less than a couple
64
hundred
bucks a
bucks.
year. That'd only be
What's that?
64. That'd only be about 64 bucks. If it's only 8 cents, that'd be about 64 bucks a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So a guy driving
so
a gasoline car will pay more. No, I'm sorry, the guy driving the electric car, like me, who doesn't, doesn't go anywhere near that amount of mileage, pays quite a bit more. And if the state did try to pass one of these $200, fees for electric vehicles, which I wrote the local, legislature and said, don't do that. That's stupid. But yeah, and
all right.
and
So
but
Fed
it had been canceled before it got, I got there. So
so federal the average federal is 18 cents and the average state is 31 cents. So
okay,
you're right at 50 cents. So that would put 800 some of the average male who uses 800 gallons of fuel a year at about 400 bucks. Now that being said, the average female uses a third of that. Okay, so married men tend to drive 3 times as much as married women. So so if you average that back out, you're probably putting that number at more like 500 miles. So it'd be about
yeah.
250 bucks a year.
So this brings up the question then: do
Mhm.
we just hit people with a fixed fee like they're doing in Texas, not taking into consideration how many miles they drive or anything like that? Or do you do what some states are trying to figure out is maybe we just charge you for the miles that you drive,
The
which I think
problem with
makes
that,
more sense.
yeah, but my problem with that is just the privacy concerns because then I've seen they're wanting to put it some kind of GPS tracking or something
No,
to
no,
show
no,
where
no.
you're going.
All you got to do is take a photograph with your camera of your odometer and submit that when you pay the taxes. I have,
True, but
I, I
but
have, I have to
hold on,
take.
Bill. Hold
Okay.
on, Bill. So the problem with that is I don't only drive in Nebraska. So I drive over into Iowa, I drive down to Kansas, stuff like that. So, then you're dealing with trying to figure out where all you drove, or do we just make it so you only pay the taxes in your home state?
Yeah, but the same thing applies. You fill up your tank here, you
Hmm.
drive over to Des Moines, you come back and you've used what, three-quarters of a tank of gasoline, but you bought the gasoline here.
So one of
Do
the
you
arguments
do
for
you owe
18
do you owe
wheelers,
Iowa for that?
well, so this is an argument that over the road truck drivers have had for years. So if you filled up in Council Bluffs and then skipped Nebraska and didn't fill up to Wyoming, then Nebraska didn't get any road tax for you driving your truck down the Nebraska highways.
Right.
And so this argument's been going on for years and it's
Oh
never going
yeah.
to get resolved.
It
What,
happened with gasoline and it's happening now with electric. So
yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
we want the roads paid for, right? That's not a
Right.
question.
But
The
I think
question
we
is
also
how
want
do
to
we equitably
incentivize.
do that?
I think we need to keep. I don't think it has to be that electric vehicles get a free pass, but I think it should be incentivized. I mean, we need more adoption, and I think that should be incentivized. But there should be something to it,
Yes.
But it should be maybe slowly grandfathered in, so that maybe in 20 years it's about the same.
Yeah.
Because one of the things is eventually all the cars
They're all
probably
going to be
will be
electric anyway.
electric or there'll be hydrogen, there'll be,
Yeah.
non-gas. I'm not convinced that the whole tractor trailer world's going to go that route, but I think we're going to keep seeing improvements in hybrid technology and things like that. So you're going to see differences in how that business is performed, but you never know.
Well,
It's to be
yeah,
seen how much
and
power we can get out of batteries too.
yeah, the thing about the trucks, our senator Pete Ricketts, whom I mentored into the internet, but that's another story we'll go into someday. Just introduced. He said, "Well, we shouldn't be requiring trucking companies to go electric." Well, trying to, have them go electric. They're very much profit driven. So
Mhm.
they're going to find whatever makes them the most amount of profit, right? So
Right.
if electric in their use, there's an art. I just posted an article today about PepsiCo and their use of their 21 Teslas operating out of their Sacramento, California bottling company, and they love those trucks. They don't drive. They're not for private owners. The typical over the road truckers that we see. This is company owned fleets that run 250 to 450 miles out of the Sacramento bottling facility, oftentimes up over the Truckee Pass and that type of thing. And they love those trucks. In fact, they said that they actually, because of the regenerative braking on the trucks, when they
Mhm.
go over the Donner Pass, they actually get back and it actually makes them money. You
Really?
operate those trucks. They like them. Now, are they for the typical owner operator? Maybe not, but that owner operator is also like everybody else driven by profit. And he has
Right.
to make a profit. So I think he has to just sit down and say, well, what's my time worth and how much profit can I make if I have to stop and recharge? And I think they were saying that these Tesla trucks can now recharge in something like 20 minutes at the mega charging superchargers. So
That's got to
those
be a
are
really
decisions that will
powerful
be made.
charger for those.
It doesn't. It won't have to. I don't think it'll have to be forced on them because
Mhm.
they're much more driven by profit incentives than you and I as private car owners. So
Right.
I think that'll work itself out, eventually.
Well, I hope so. Like I've said before, I'm a real big believer in, free market economies, but you have to make it so that that people understand the technology, because you and I see things other people just don't believe is out there yet. And we see solutions that people don't realize are coming. And that's why we're trying to
Well,
educate people
they
on
need
these
to be
things.
reading EV World. Damn it.
There you go. But anyways, we've been a little long-winded today. I'm
Well, yeah,
gonna
that's me. I apologize. I do that all
Oh,
the time.
that's okay. That's okay. I want to remind everybody to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell if you can, so we can produce more of this content. Anyways, Bill, I'm going to go ahead and cut the show for today. I
See you
appreciate, as
Thursday.
always, having you.